Mr. Blair has basically not informed the country of what he's going to do, or his ministers, as it would appear. So, like, whether I agree we should have gone in, which I think we should, but there's a way of doing it. And I think politics as a whole in a real mess at the minute, with reference to expenses, and now the politicians lying through the teeth. You ain't going to get anyone coming out to vote this year.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the woman down there on the left, and then I go up to the man in the white in the shirt there with the patched shirt. Yes.
Hi,
Yes.
I completely agree with Douglas Murray. I think the Chilcot inquiry is only going to show us how we entered into the war and not why. And I think the British people want to know the motives behind entering the war and to not only look at the legality, but the morality.
Absolutely.
And are you concerned about the issue of whether it's legal, lawful or not?
Well, I'm a student of law, so I am concerned. But I don't think the British public should be so focused upon it. As you say, international law is ambiguous and he probably won't be prosecuted. It's not actually the point of the matter.
So when Lord Goldsmith gave his evidence, you weren't surprised that he changed his mind over the 3 weeks? I mean, you thought that was
I wasn't surprised, but I think he is to blame.
Okay. The man up there, yes, and then I come
Yes, I'm just very surprised to find that we struggle to worry about whether a war can be legal or not. It's a war. I mean, surely that's immoral as well as being illegal.
Well, it was originally a liberation, wasn't it? Wasn't that what it was supposed to be? When
Which it was for the Iraqi people.
all right. You two at the end, let the others have a go. Nigel Lawson.
Right, I agree with those who say that the legality issue is not the heart of the matter. The idea that it would have made all the difference to the whole thing if Blair had got this second United Nations resolution is absurd. The fact of the matter is that it was sold to the British people on a totally false prospectus, the so-called weapons of mass destruction and the dodgy dossier. And we know, too, now, that he wrote a letter to, private letter to George W. Bush about a year earlier, I can't remember the exact date, saying, don't worry, whatever happens, we'll be with you on the night. He's also, more recently, told somebody called Fern Britton, I don't know her, that, anyhow, even if he'd known there were no weapons of mass
television interview.
even if he'd known there'd be no weapons of mass destruction, he still would have wanted to go to war. And it was a huge blunder, a huge, costly blunder. In geopolitical terms, it was a huge blunder. What has been the effect? The effect has been to leave Iran, which is a far more dangerous power, a far more dangerous country than Iraq ever was to the West, leave Iran as the unchallenged major power in the region. That was sheer political, diplomatic and geopolitical stupidity. It is a colossal blunder which has cost this country a great deal.
Okay. The woman in the third row from the back. There, yes. Right.
You say it's been a liberation for Iraq, but it clearly hasn't been, because there's still hundreds of people dying every month from suicide bombs. There's been no improvement in education, women's rights, healthcare at all.
What's your view of the legality of it? Is that an issue that concerns you or not?
It's not an issue because I don't think it's going to solve anything.
Okay, Ben Bradshaw?
Well, I think that's right, and I mean the lawyers will argue about this till kingdom come. And as Douglas reminded us, I think Jenny, you supported the action in Kosovo to stop the genocide by Milosevic,
but that had wide support.
It had no
maybe
United
not
Nations.
From the end.
It had no United Nations resolution.
And the European Union behind
yes, but it had no
and
United
it was
Nations
in our
resolution.
own backyard. It was actually in Europe.
It had no United Nations resolution, which is what the central.
But, you know,
Sorry, can I say this? Was it legal or not? I mean, the assertion made here was that it wasn't legal.
I think the distinction with on Kosovo is that it wasn't legal, but it was legitimate.
So you're not worried by legality?
Iraq. I said that people would argue about it till kingdom come. The thing that has really bothered me was the evidence, which was false. As Nigel said,
right.
It was a false prospectus.
Well, Ming Campbell, the then Liberal Democrat leader, also agreed that, as did every country, that Saddam had
and a lot
weapons
of your
mass
party
destruction.
then agreed
but there were
with
15. There weren't only one or two. There were 15 binding UN resolutions against Saddam. But in the end, I think where we have to come to on this is what Nigel and Douglas said, which is it's possible for people on this panel, for people in the country, for people in the audience to have deeply held views on one side or the other, and it ought to be possible for us to agree that just because we don't necessarily share that view, that we don't question that person's motives.
But there is another important
All right,
fact.
hold on, I'm going to go to Jane. You have another
really
important fact, but wait just a moment with it. Jane Moore.
I think there's benefit of hindsight here, of course, and if maybe it had been as successful as Sierra Leone, we might not be having this inquiry in particular, because it's obviously been a bit of a disaster. But I think we can also hear, you know, Saddam Hussein, bad man, nobody laments his loss. Was it legal? Ostensibly, no. It wasn't. And for me, but again, I don't think that's particularly the issue, but for me, looking at the bigger picture, I then kind of think, well, what is the point of having this whole sort of UN structure if we're not going to actually listen to what they have to say? And there we are saying we're going to go to this country and we're going to try and make it a democratic country, and then we're behaving like a dictatorship, ostensibly. Well, we were behaving like a dictatorship, because even our own Attorney General was not consulted. The Cabinet were not told of the arguments leading up to it. They were just presented.
Tony Blair won an election
afterwards. No, but they were presented with the Attorney General saying this is a legal thing to do. They were not presented with the argument leading up to that.
Ben Bradshaw, are you in any way, uneasy about the way that this has gone over this week, and what we've heard about the Foreign Office lawyers, for instance, telling Jack Straw that it was illegal?
No.
Then Goldsmith changing his view.
So what's the point of having them?
I remember at the time, and I'm sure you will remember at the time, and many people in the audience remember at the time, that this was fiercely argued at the time between lawyers. I remember discussion programmes on the BBC between international lawyers, half of whom said there is justification, half of them said there isn't. So the idea that the Foreign Office lawyers would disagree with the Attorney General, who would disagree with somebody else, is not a surprise to me at all.
The man bang in the middle there. Yes, I think the microphone will reach you. Yes, sir.
I think Tony Blair and George Bush, surely they should actually be tried in The Hague, because what they did to Iraq, honestly, look at the amount of lives lost. Even if Saddam is actually hung by Iraqi people, what they did was completely wrong. And by the look of it, I believe that, you know, these people that should actually go to The Hague and be tried for what they've done.
OK, let's go on. Before we do, Twitter, if you want to follow us, we're at BBC Question Times. You probably know if you like tweeting. You can also text us on 83981, CFAX page 155. We'll tell you what others are saying. If you're watching digitally, push the red button. And email us with your comments if you would too. Ken Edwards, please.
Was David Cameron's broken society claim in the wake of the Edlington case a sign of blatant electioneering?
David Cameron said in the wake of that case of the two boys torturing nearly to death two other little boys, said that this wasn't some isolated incident. This was to do with the state of Britain. Jane Moore, do you agree with him?
I do agree with him to a certain extent. Was it electioneering? Yes, I think it probably was. But then I think all politicians are guilty of that. I don't think he's unique in that.
But do you believe Britain is a broken society?
I wouldn't say... it's a very pejorative phrase, isn't it? I wouldn't say that it's wholly broken, but I would say it's fragmenting very badly, and I can't see any glue on the horizon at the moment.
Ben Bradshaw?
No, I think it was wrong, and I think it was almost irresponsible. I mean, to give the impression, you know, in a country where the vast majority of young people are doing better than they've ever done, where the vast majority of parents are doing their best...
Ben, that's not true.
If you look at...
Ben,
Jane,
that's not true.
Look at the figures coming out of GCSEs, look at the figures of young people going to university. The vast majority of young people in this country are responsible, law-abiding citizens of this country. They do not behave like that. And the vast majority of parents are also doing their best, and they're doing a good job. So
no one's disputing that.
Well, no, that was the implication of this. So to try to generalise from these isolated cases, and also to try to fiddle the figures as he did over crime, which you're very well aware of.
You can't blame it on the parents. You can blame it on a whole host of other things.
Doesn't mean to say there aren't big problems in some of our communities, and that's clear. But to try to say that there's a general broken Britain based on one or two isolated incidents, I think is wrong.
Nigel Lawson.
Well, first, we all know sadly, it's a lot more than just one or two isolated incidents. Secondly, David Cameron, to do him justice, has been banging on about the broken society for years. It wasn't just something he dreamt up after this terrible atrocity with the two young boys. Thirdly, he has shown himself, I think, to be more in touch with public opinion than Ben Bradshaw has tonight. Fourthly, and I won't go on very long, don't worry. Fourthly...
When you get to 10thly, I'll stop you.
Fourthly, the problem is... Of course, the whole of society is not broken. Of course, you're not broken in this audience. But there is a terrifying